My content hits 10 million views in a month for the first time. I tell you how I did it. The TikTok ban is lifted for 75 days with a deadline to sell it, and the number one YouTuber, Mr. Beast, might be first in line to buy it. I rant a little bit about my experience of swapping from PC to Mac when it comes to editing and all my content creation, and plus I answer some of your questions, including what camera should you start with, and how specific can your content be on your channel when you first start out. I'm Ryan Bolt, and you're listening to Clickworthy. Now, first off the top, hello and a big warm welcome to what I'm going to assume will be a few extra listeners this week, because this will be the first episode that goes up at the same time that I announce my main channels that this podcast in fact exists, and I try and encourage some of my main audience to listen to it. Which if this is your first episode that you're starting off with, the reason that I've done that is I just want to give people an option to pick between a couple different topics in the first 3 or so episodes, so that anyone can just jump in at whatever point they actually want to listen to. And we've finally started to get the first couple days of autumn weather just starting to crack through. We've had 2 days in a row when I've woken up and it's been a ripping cold 10 degrees in the morning, and autumn is by far my favorite season. It really just gets me in the mood for hot cross buns, a whole lot of hot cross buns. And coffee in the morning, yeah, ripping cold, but you still get the good days. There's still plenty of time to grow fruit and veg in the garden. And it's also just this nice momentum builder sort of into the really productive parts of the year, which of course this will be my first year doing that as a content creator instead of just working for someone else. And yeah, really excited to keep that train rolling. All right, so let's talk about. I had a couple of short form contents really pop off, specifically this one, which I guess I will play now. So, a really simple little 8 or 9 second TikTok, and across Instagram and TikTok, that got over 20 million views. It's the first one that I've had really pop off. I've had some get really close to 1 million views before. And yeah, this one has been pretty good for the old numbers on TikTok. That one TikTok got me about 30,000 followers on TikTok. It's interesting that it got more views on Instagram, but it only got me about 3 or 4,000 followers on Instagram compared to, nearly 35,000 maybe on TikTok. And then on YouTube, which was also posted to YouTube Shorts the same day, it's currently only sitting at about 280,000 views, which my thinking as to why it hasn't done as well on YouTube Shorts is I think YouTube Shorts still just has a much higher bar of how much the content is watched and how many people swipe away, that your content has to be so much better performing, because there's still just not that many eyeballs watching YouTube short content, whereas there's so many more people scrolling Instagram Reels and TikToks. Yeah, it's those two have been, well, that one reel has done so good for me. So the reasons that it works is, and if you're an audio listener, the first part won't make sense, but it starts with a really strong visual. If you watch it, you see the shovel come down with the dirt, and it's this beautiful, almost mushroom cloud of dirt that just puffs across the screen, as well as there's some good sound of the kind of the clinks and the shks of the dirt and the shovel kind of plowing into the ground and then shoveling the dirt on top. And that's just such a nice circuit breaker for people who are scrolling. Is it so attention grabbing because it's so different, as well as of course the auditory hook or the vocal hook of it, of when disposing of a dead body. It's so different to what you hear. It's so attention grabbing, and it's so different from a lot of the typical hooks that you might hear on Instagram and TikTok, which, if you don't know what a hook is, it's essentially just the first sentence of a piece of content that is really designed to hook you in. It's a single sentence that's really designed to get you to keep watching just for long enough for you to work out what the TikTok's actually about. One that I use a fair bit is "I bet you didn't know," or another one is "don't do X without watching this video first." They can be pretty simple. like that, but they usually just contain really strong emotive words and also use the word you a lot, speaking to the audience. Like, you on the other end, here's what this piece of content is going to do for you, and really tries to give the audience a good reason to not swipe away. Um, and then the TikTok itself just ends on such a beautiful little punchline that is also, it's so good having a the punchline being the call to action to follow. And I honestly don't think it doesn't actually have that great of a ratio from views to follows actually compared to some of my other content. So, I mean, I have one of my TikToks that got about 700,000 views and I got about 15,000 followers off that. But this one that has, I'll go, what's that? More than 10 times the views. I only got about double the followers off. So there's not always a direct correlation. But the one thing that I have learned is a lot of people have really strong opinions on how to correctly dispose of a dead body. One of the reasons that I think this video has done so well is so many people feel the need to add to the conversation of additional steps that you can take to help dispose of a dead body effectively. And last week we spoke about hate comments and also just a bit on stupid comments. And this TikTok is a bit of a good example because of how some people have just taken it they don't understand, like they can't fathom that it's a joke, and have said stuff like, how, like, they're like, I'm reporting this, I'm reporting you, how is this allowed to be on TikTok? You're giving like the criminals the ideas, like, hello, how is this legal? Like, how is this TikTok legal? All that sort of stuff. But it's like, it's just meant to be fun and it's meant to be funny. And so some people can't get that. But yeah, no, it's good. Oh, and I should mention that the opening line itself, I definitely stole from another TikTok. Like, one thing that I do as I'm scrolling through TikTok is anytime I hear a really emotive or just a really interesting and especially different hook, I usually just open up notes and I write it down. Or sometimes if someone uses a really good hook, I try and work out what's the exact word that works really well. And I have a separate notes document that's just called power words, which are words that I think are really strong and emotive. And some of them have been around content for ages. Just a lot of like, don't, free is another one. Cheap is kind of one. Lazy is a good one. And need is another one. So these are things that you will notice YouTubers use in their titles a whole lot. But my theory is that there's a huge plethora of all of these different power words that I think if you can get one that is even 80% as effective as something like don't or stop, but isn't in that top 10, 20 most common used power words, then your content, like, you should be able to actually create a more enticing hook or reason to keep watching, or something that really triggers something in your brain much better than just reusing those same ones that everyone else does. Because, and I forget if I've already talked about this, but your brain has this fantastic ability to essentially anything that we see again and again just filter out. It's on purpose. It's completely an evolutionary advantage that patterns that we see and again, our brain that burns a whole lot of calories needs to go, okay, that is something that I can just kind of grab the sentiment of and ignore all of the details around so that I can actually focus on keeping myself alive, keeping myself from being eaten by an animal or whatever. And the same thing happens with like ads, is something that happens so much. Is how many times have you, like, you're watching the TV and the ads come on and you just kind of switch off watching the TV and your brain just goes into some complete other mode to where even though the ads are on, you can even be looking at the screen and you are just completely drowning out. Your brain just drowns out what's happening there and you just start thinking about something else. And that's why you've really got to fight to not be wallpaper. You've got to really actually stand out and be different in a meaningful way. There's some pretty good ideas. The guy who made HubSpot, like the CEO and founder of HubSpot, which is this like they do like marketing automation. They help like project managers and also content creators and people who build like digital marketing funnels, meaning just sales that happen online. Um, and one of his big theories is when in doubt, do the opposite. Just if you can do the opposite to someone else in market, you are probably actually going to do well because there is someone who that you're going to have an automatic audience who is currently not served by, say, like the big successful brands that are already doing the thing that you're going to do the opposite to. A good example of this, and try and make the connection yourself to content. Because this is about content, but I just think about it in the context of the way that brands work. So you look at Coca-Cola and you go, great, they serve an awesome tasting drink that's relatively pretty cheap. It's available everywhere. They serve it in big quantities. What if I was to make a drink that tastes bad, is expensive, I serve in small little cans, and if you pitch that to someone, they go, that's horrible. That'll never work. Well, let me introduce to you the world's second highest selling drink behind Coke, Red Bull, because that's exactly what they do. And they've done studies where they have quantified that people know that people say that their drink tastes bad. Like Red Bull knows that their drink tastes objectively bad when surveyed by people, but because people who are buying it are also looking for a medicinal psychoactive effect, because that's what caffeine does. The taste, like having it taste bad, actually increases that effect and actually increases customer satisfaction. So, when in doubt, when you do something that's completely the opposite of someone else, it will usually work. So, if you're looking at someone in your niche, you know that you want to make fishing content, and most of the channels just go do big fishing trips out in like big freshwater or open water, and they catch huge fish. Well, if you do the opposite of that and you exclusively go and try and find fishing spots in towns, in little rivers that where no one really fishes, but you can kind of catch small or decent things there that no one else really thinks to do. You will probably find an audience because you will probably find someone where that is their only opportunity to go fishing because they don't have a car or they only have an hour or so at a time to like go somewhere. So somewhere close to them, and then learning all those tips and tricks for you is actually going to perform pretty well. You will find a niche by doing the opposite of what someone else has done. That's a bit of a big tangent, but anyway, that's why that TikTok works. And just one more quote. There's just this fantastic quote by Roy. It's not Roy Morgan. One of the world's leading behavioral scientists, the chairman of Ogilvy, who's a big marketing company, Roy Sutherland. And that is the opposite of a good idea is usually another good idea. Yeah. Make your content different. Different is better. Completely different will usually perform well if you can still make some decent content. Anyway, so the TikTok ban's back. I mean, the TikTok is unbanned. I actually don't really want to spend too much time on this because there's a whole lot of, I don't know, political feelings like wrapped up in this. I think the main thing that's really interesting for creators, and so this is actually a little bit related to the last thing, is I think one of the main reasons that one TikTok for me has performed really well is I actually posted it 1 or 2 hours after the ban came into effect, where everyone in America got that notification that, sorry, TikTok is gone. And the first 100 or so comments were all to the effect of like, oh, TikTok's going to be just fine. I'm like, oh, if this is the direction that we're taking TikTok with the Americans gone, I'm all for it. I think there was an aspect of lightning in the bottle with having it at the right time, of just having this like already good TikTok just kind of at that right cultural moment. And also just everyone's feeds would have just been so taken up by that stuff. One thing that I'm a little bit annoyed about in my own TikTok algorithm, because for me, TikTok, when I'm scrolling it, is just that little break. Like I need 15 minutes of just my mind doing nothing. And right now, because Australia is imminently closing in on an election in approximately 3 months, unannounced yet, there's just so much political stuff on the TikTok feed. And it's just so like, I want to watch draining TikToks of people opening Pokemon boosters or other people gardening. I want to see how their plants are going. This one account that I cannot get enough of, which is, I think it's Changdong Seeds, this Thai seed company that just makes the most satisfying gardening content you've ever seen, where it's always cut to the beat of some awesome like Asian music where they're just like harvesting things in their garden and then cooking them. But all of the cuts where they're say snipping apart some spring onions or actually chopping something on the chopping block is always just with the exact beat of the song. And it works so well. Yeah. So TikTok's back. It does only have officially 75 days to still sell off the American portion of TikTok. Um, Mr. Beast is allegedly connected to multiple different groups of investors and venture capitalists that are looking to buy TikTok, kind of with Mr. Beast at the center of their bids. And if that happens, I mean, I think that it's actually such a perfect fitting and logical step for TikTok, the platform, and Mr. Beast to take. And I would just love to see a creator run platform and see what that would look like, especially someone like Jimmy who kind of understands the small little details in between when it's empowering for a content creator to market their own products versus when it's more advantageous to take brand deals, advertising other products, and having someone like that to actually try and empower creators, I think it'd be really interesting. Whatever the outcome, I would just love a creator fund for TikTok in Australia, which means that we get paid for actually posting the content. Because, man, I see how much some of these American creators make with the views that they get, and I see the views that I get, and I go, if we had a creator fund in Australia, I think I'd be making an extra $2,000 to $5,000 a month. And oh boy, I currently get $0 unless I'm actually just doing sponsored posts. All right. So moving on, I have made the biggest non-car, non-house purchase of my life. I have bought a M4 Pro MacBook Pro, and I have swapped to it from a medium high-end gaming PC. If you know PC specs, it is roughly a Intel i7, a couple generations old. It's got a 3060 Ti graphics card. It's like 32 gigs of RAM. Uh, I've as I've been making content, I've had to keep upgrading the storage. It's got like 4 gigs of SSDs. A pretty handy little gaming PC. And I started to go down the rabbit hole a bit as to how I should upgrade because it's one of the things that I've kind of been running into with the content that some editing functions and stuff just take too long. Looking into reviews, eventually settled on moving to Mac because Apple have started developing their own processors, which are slowly pulling ahead of the whole rest of the market. They're pulling ahead for especially content creation type software. They're ahead of Intel by a long way, ahead of AMD. And to the point where it's starting to become a little bit of am I willing to put up with some of the really weird shortcomings of Macs and like the Mac OS for the additional power that you can unlock with one of these these Apple M chips? And as an example, the time that it takes to render a video from PC to my new MacBook, the MacBook is about 7 times faster. It is a huge leap forward. And there are some functions within Premiere Pro, which is what I use to edit, which is a little bit strange. Say, one thing I use sometimes is in the color correction, auto color correction, which essentially adjusts the levels of the brights and the darks and the saturation and sometimes some individual colors on a video image, which is something that I try to really get right in Camera First Go so that the way that it looks on my little screen when I'm recording on my camera is good enough quality to eventually upload. But sometimes the way the lighting conditions work, especially if there's sunlight shining on the lens. You just need to make some small adjustments. And when I was doing that on my PC, you can just click on it and it works. It takes, I don't know, 5 seconds or so of kind of just nothing happens. And then it analyzes the image, changes all the settings that it needs to. That's fine. On the MacBook Pro, when I click it, it just happens immediately to the point that when I first did it, I thought there was something wrong, that it wasn't actually doing it because it's so fast. So, my main problems with the MacBook is there are still problems from the last time that I used a Mac nearly 10 years ago that still are problems. Um, One of the first ones that, God, I have no idea how this hasn't been changed. When you right click on a, say, an SD card or a portable hard drive to eject it so that it's safe to remove, that on that menu that comes up when you right click, the eject button is right next to the erase disk button. So, say when I have my portable hard drive that has all of my footage from the last, say, 6 months on it, within a couple of pixels apart, maybe even 1 pixel apart, if my mouse slips off the eject hard drive, it can just go straight to erase all data on the hard drive. Now, of course, there would be an extra pop up or whatever, but the fact that those are so close together and that was a problem people were complaining about 10 years ago and it's still a problem is ridiculous. The next thing, mouse scroll wheels. So, Apple wants you to buy their Magic Mouse, which wouldn't be a problem except for the fact that it's so uncomfortable to use. It's this really low profile kind of flat mouse. It's not ergonomic, nowhere near as ergonomic as actual nice mice that you can get in stores where you can actually get one that fits your hand, especially if you have different size hands. My hands I'd call like medium or medium large, and I definitely get cramps if I'm using that actual Apple mouse. But when you use a normal mouse, the scroll wheel is reversed because on MacBook, when you use gestures, and I agree with Apple on this, when you use gestures on the trackpad, as you pull down, the screen actually scrolls up. So it's kind of like you're grabbing the page on screen and pulling it up. And that does make intuitive sense. When that doesn't make intuitive sense is when you swap to a mouse scroll wheel and you pull down and the page moves up. Now, that's fine. You might think that there is a setting to change that. But unfortunately, the Apple trackpad and mouse wheel, there is no way in Mac OS to separate those. You either have to have them both pull down to scroll up or them both scroll up to scroll down. And that is annoying. Okay, so then you can download a app or whatever, third party app, non Apple official, to then flip those. But the thing is that specifically in Premiere Pro, the editing software that I'm in, the one place that this reverse scroll wheel function doesn't work is in the Premiere Pro menus, which is the main thing that I want to scroll in. It's so frustrating that still doesn't work. And you can get from Logitech this one mouse called the like MX3. It's like the Logitech MX3, I think, that solves this for you. But I don't want to spend $150 on a mouse just to solve this one problem. And it's annoying because I had to just buy a new mouse maybe a month before I bought the MacBook and before I realized that this would be a problem. And it's a Logitech mouse. And I was hopeful that in the Logitech software, I could still do the same thing, but you can't. So I either need Logitech or Apple to please sort this problem out for me. It's so annoying. However, nowhere near as annoying as the number one problem that I find that MacBooks have is what I want to do, because Windows laptops have been able to do this for yonks. They have been able to do this for so long, probably 10 years or so, where you have a docking station that you then plug into, say, two separate monitors, and then you plug your laptop in with one cable into this docking station, and then you connect your mouse and keyboard and all other peripherals to the docking station so that you only have one cable going into the MacBook, everything else comes out of the docking station, and the laptop charges. It connects to both screens, it connects to your mouse and keyboard. You can plug in like USB sticks, hard drives, or whatever to the docking station. That all works. The main thing is you only need to plug in one cable to the laptop and everything connects. MacBook doesn't have that ability natively. There is this one function called Display Link, which can do it. And the thing about Display Link, because I have, over the last month, I've spent probably $600 on different docks to try and get this MacBook to work the way that PCs have worked for a decade. And I'm not out of pocket that whole amount. I have, by that $600, that's three different docks that I have spent about $200 each on, returned, and then bought something else to try and fix this problem. And that is when you are using a DisplayLink compatible dock, you can plug in one USB-C cable to the MacBook and it will then display on two separate screens. The problem is that this isn't like a native display. This is two separate displays that it's like live streaming to. So when you're moving your mouse around, there's about a third of a second delay. When you're typing on the keyboard, there is a slight delay. This is like some weird hacky workaround that Apple have come up with that's not just like, it's not the same as just plugging an HDMI into the MacBook. I have eventually found this dock that kind of solves the problem. It's the only one in the world that just, it kind of in the shape of one cable actually has two separate USB-C connectors that you plug into two USB-C ports in the MacBook, where it will let you charge and use two screens. But I mean, come on, this is like everything else about the MacBook has been so impressive. Like one of the other main reasons that I got it is having a display as high quality is really, really handy for when I need to know if the colors on a video will look good because it's a true tone display. You can actually do fairly high fidelity color correction on it and know that on whatever screen someone eventually views it on, it will actually look decent. And what I should mention is that one of the reasons that I got this MacBook Pro, which by the way, the specs that I ended up settling on, it's the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M4 Pro chip. So that's an upgrade from the normal M4 processor and graphics card with terabyte hard drive, 24 gigs of RAM. And that, by the way, costs $4,000. And I got a little bit off that because now that I am actually a small business in the eyes of the Australian government, I can sign up to things like the JB Hi-Fi Business Partner Program, where because I'm a business, I get business pricing on stuff. So I actually paid about $3,800 for it, which is good. That's a nice like 5% off. And I mean, these companies make like no margin on Apple products. So I'm sure that I'm sure they would have about a 9% margin, maybe 10% margin. And so they're probably like cutting that in half. But yeah, what I need to mention is that when I bought it, I just thought I was buying a really good editing laptop so that I could actually do some of the editing for stuff while I'm like on the couch, so that I don't actually have to just lock myself in this room, which is my like little editing office it's the furthest corner of the house. So it can get a little bit isolating or whatever. So if I want to spend time with the family, I can kind of do some like TikTok editing or whatever on the laptop. And how my partners express interest in trying to help me edit some stuff, I'm like, yeah, and then we can have like the one license on this laptop, one license on the computer. Well, on the like desktop PC, we can kind of swap the MacBook around a little bit. However, as soon as I started actually editing on it, I realized how much better of a performance it was than my desktop. So it's actually my own fault that it changed from being my really good second machine to just being my primary machine because it's so impressive. Yeah, but it's the dock that I ended up the dock that I've ended up landing on, by the way, it actually has this really impressive feature because one of the main areas where Apple will really sting you is getting extra hard drive space. They just charge so much for. basically every time you are upgrading the hard drive, they're charging you an extra $200 to $400. So I think the smallest you can get this MacBook in is 500 gig, which is it's just not enough. It's not enough to load on like a full editing project sometimes because now my folder of kind of my own B-roll footage that I use for like overlay shots, that's probably 250 gig. And by the time you have like on the actual OS and some junk files and it will inevitably accumulate, 512 would just not be enough. So I need to fork out to upgrade to the terabyte, which was an extra 200 or 300. And then if you upgrade to the 2 terabyte again, that's another 200 or 300. And these laptops are all completely manufactured as like chip on board. It is one board where everything is not even soldered on, like it's etched out during the manufacturing process so that you can't possibly upgrade these once you have them. You need to buy like the specs that you need for the next up to 10 years at the start. But I also didn't feel too bad about forking out that much because now my content's getting to the point where I am starting to get some income that I can actually just reinvest it back in. And I can kind of take that bet on myself that the extra productivity will actually cover that cost back. And also, I haven't really bought a new computer for nearly 10 years. So it's actually somewhat reasonable for me to buy a new MacBook or buy a new computer with reasonably high end specs because it actually has a really long life cycle for me. And by the way, if you guys want more tech talk, definitely let me know in the comments of, oh, you should now be able to actually leave comments on Spotify for this podcast. And you can also let me know on the YouTube comments if you want more tech talk in this podcast or you just want it to be more creator focused because they kind of go hand in hand a bit. And I definitely think some of the content on this second channel will become a lot more tech focused, like tech and camera stuff instead of creator advice, because the creator advice stuff just isn't performing that well. And I really don't want to have to make all the super sensationalized creator stuff that a lot of the other creator advice channels make, because then I'm not solving the problem that I'm trying to with this podcast, where I'm trying to give you the real advice instead of just the hyper clickable advice. But I'm completely comfortable keeping this podcast as creator stuff instead of creator and tech stuff. However, speaking about tech stuff, let's move on to some of your questions. And thank you so much for starting to leave them. Whatever platform you're leaving this on, please make sure to leave a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, of course, leave a thumbs up. And yeah, leave me comments for any questions that you have. Anything else you want to say, comments really do help push the videos out in the algorithm. So Taylor Olsen 2733 asks, what cameras do you use on Culinary Garden? If I'm starting out, what cameras should I buy? Now, the first part of this question, those two questions are going to have very different answers. So let's start with the cameras that I use in Culinary Garden. About 99% of the stuff that you see, or sorry, my microphone lights off. No, it's still recording. 99% of the stuff that you see on Culinary Garden that's been shot in the last 4 or so months has all been shot on the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Would be about 20% of the shots. I mostly use that for like overlay shots or B-roll as we call it. Just nice shots of the garden. Because that is such a small little camera that fits on a monopod really well, so that I can just kind of bring it out with me while I'm gardening and just get some shots of me doing stuff that I can use in future videos that I don't know exactly what they're for. And if you've never heard of it, we might talk about it a little bit later when we talk about what cameras I'd recommend. But most of the stuff that you see is shot on the Sony A7C II, which is actually a really unique choice when it comes to content creators for what I'm shooting on in terms of video production, because they're options that cost about the same that will give you a few more video features and a few like higher end image options. And there are options in the same price range and there are some options that will give you very, very similar video performance in a slightly lower price point. The reason for me that I chose this is because I still really like photography and I really wanted a camera that could do both really well with a few specific needs that I really wanted. So the main thing is it needs to shoot in 4K up to, I guess, 30 frames a second. Really, I shoot everything in 25 frames a second because I'm in Australia and all of our electrical circuits are run at 50 hertz, including like TVs and stuff. So anytime there would be a light in shot that actually flickers on those frequencies or a TV that actually flickers on those frequencies, if I had my camera set to 30 frames a second, instead of 25, you would actually notice some flickering on those things. So it's important to shoot the frame rate of 25 or 30, depending on where you are and where your electrical circuits, what hertz range your electrical circuits actually run on, if you want to avoid that like light flickering that you'll sometimes see in some videos. And one thing that's really annoying with phones is that they all default to shooting in that 30 frames or 60 frames a second. And sometimes don't give you the option to change that to PAL refresh rates over NTSC, which is just annoying considering there's actually a large number of the world is in PAL, including Japan, where some of these phones are manufactured. And yeah, so it can shoot 4K in just like normal playback speed. I think it can do up to 60 frames a second, which is slow mo up to 2 times. It can't go slower than that in 4K, which is one of the things that it can't do over what others can do. But the main reason that I wanted it is it will shoot 4K uncropped on full frame sensor, which full frame is a large sensor. It is the same sensor size that you'll get shooting 35mm film. It has a really nice aesthetic with low depth of field, which means you get like nice blurry backgrounds against subjects. It has really great low light performance. For me, most importantly, it can get a really good dynamic range, which means the amount of difference between the brightest part of the image and the darkest part of the image that a camera can actually capture is called its dynamic range. Our eyes have roughly, it's like 13 or 16 stops of dynamic range. A bad, like a, I don't know, I guess, okay digital camera will have about 7 stops of dynamic range. Really good photography cameras have like 13 stops of dynamic range. When shooting the video formats that we do, they have about, these have about like 10 to 12. So you're not actually capturing everything that your eyes can see. If you look out and you see some like shadows or like really bright sunny parts, on what will actually come through on the video will either be complete darkness in the shadows or just complete white in the bright parts. And the amount of detail that you can capture in those areas increases with your camera's dynamic range. And for me, one of the reasons that's really important is the biggest like technical challenge that I face on shooting my gardening content is the best place to have your plants grow in the yard is the worst place to get a decent looking shot through a camera because plants you need to be in direct sun. When you are shooting, if your subject is facing into the direct sun, it looks so gross and harsh. And well, usually the presenter would have to squint as well because like you're looking at the sun. And so what you normally want to do is you want to flip that round so that your subject is standing with their backs to the sun so that they're like faces in shadow, but you expose that and it actually looks really nice and pleasant. But I can't do that because the other side of my garden beds is the fence. So I really need some nice like dynamic range, which this camera has, even though most of the time I either try and shoot on overcast days, which ironically, even though I live in one of the like most overcast places in Australia, there has been like no overcast days since I've started the channel. We get like maybe one every 2 weeks. And boy, I try to film every time that comes up. And the other one is I just try and shoot in the last couple hours of the day when the sun is a lot more diffused through the atmosphere. Those like harsh lighting effects don't have as much of an issue. But the main reason that I chose this over other cameras that do all those same things as well is that this has a 33 megapixel sensor. So you can actually get really large photo files out of it. The size of the sensor doesn't actually impact image quality for video that much. In fact, most high-end video cameras now will have a 12 megapixel sensor, which is roughly what you need to shoot 4K. And the reason that works really well is the when you're recording that to a video file, the camera doesn't have to do a whole bunch of extra calculation work compressing what is essentially a larger image down to the size of 4K. It's just recording the size that it is storing that as. So it's actually really efficient for cameras to have a smaller sensor, like a less pixel dense sensor when it comes to video cameras. So things like the A7S II and FX3, which are both Sony cameras they're the sort of crossover point between a professional, like made for high-end video production camera and something that is really in this like enthusiast content creator world. That they're like the crossover point. And they're nearly actually the same camera, just kind of in different body shapes. And those cost, they retail for like 5.5 grand, but you will get them secondhand for like three to 3.5 grand or so, which is like once you are relying on making those videos as a living, is like a really reasonable expense. So yeah, that's what I shoot on. Before that, actually, let's talk about what cameras I would recommend when you're first starting out. And I will also give you some tips or the way that I, with essentially no money, started actually buying decent camera gear. So, if you're starting out, what should you buy? So, the first thing you need to understand is that audiences care so much more about being able to hear you than being able to see like a beautiful image on screen. So, what you are usually going to be best off doing when you're first starting to create content, essentially all the way up until either you're getting enough traction to where you say this warrants more investment in, or you essentially start making money on it, is just shoot on your phone. One of the things that's a bit annoying about shooting on your phone, unlike most cameras that are made for content creators, is you don't have a screen where you can face it and see yourself. Because if you want to shoot on the front facing camera, the quality is going to be nowhere near as good as the rear facing cameras on smartphones. But what you do need to do, you don't have to do this straight away, but sort of once you start getting a little bit of traction, definitely invest in some sort of audio upgrade. I think the sort of sweet spot for most people is going to be something like the DJI Mic 2s or the Rode Video Mic Pro, which if you're on the video podcast, they're essentially just these little like square microphones. And if you watch TikTok, you've probably seen people use these little square wireless microphones, and these will Bluetooth straight to your phone. But they will usually also come with some sort of like transmitter receiver so that you can plug them into whatever camera you eventually buy as audio jack. And this is exactly what I would have bought when I first upgraded my audio, if it wasn't for the fact that I have some like brand connections at some audio outlets where I could get some exceptional deals on some different mic packs. So the first mic packs that I bought when my TikToks were starting to do well, the first microphone that I upgraded to was actually this random USB wired headset that my partner happened to have around that I then like just strapped I like sticky tapes to a stick so that I could like hold it as a microphone. And I can never go more than a meter away from the camera, but for my initial TikToks, that's all I needed. And I just spoke right into like the inbuilt mic into that. And the audio quality was spectacular compared to just the built-in microphone to the camera, or to the smartphone, I guess. So definitely look for things like that. Like if you have any existing like headphones or whatever that does have a mic on them, using those really close to your face will get you really good quality audio. Or if you're not actually speaking to a camera, and you're just doing something that involves voiceover, speaking next to your phone, just like into voice recorder, you'll be shocked by how high quality that audio is. Especially if you have, now I don't have an iPhone, but I'm pretty sure they have like AI enhancement features to help you get a like studio quality sounding audio from just recording direct into their mics, because they help like remove the reverb and stuff. So yeah, audio should be your first upgrade. And the main thing is that it is such a skill curve learning to speak to a camera and trying to learn how to just structure a TikTok and stuff, that you don't really need to worry about buying stuff for those first, say, at least month. Like, what I really, really encourage everyone who wants to be a creator to do is commit to making 30 short form pieces of content in 30 days. Just make a TikTok a day, and every single day try and do something better. And you will look back at the end of that 30 days and you'll go, my God, I've improved so much. After maybe, I think 10, you will look back at your first one and it will be unrecognizable how much worse quality that is than where you get up to. And yeah, just like learning to speak to a camera is so tricky. One piece of, like, I don't know, I guess like hate comment or whatever, I still get on some of my early videos that I almost don't accept it, is people who like criticize you stumbling over words or like mispronouncing something or like reaching for the wrong term when you meant something else, especially because I will usually, like in the editing, I'll like put on screen with an asterisk, like the word that I meant to use. Like in gardening, I've used perennial when I should have used to mean annual, which just for non-gardening people means plants that live for different lengths of time. Annuals die after 1 year, perennials live for many years. And I still get comments on some of those like first couple of videos of people being like, I'm not taking advice from someone who doesn't know the difference between annual and perennial, even though I put on screen what I meant to say. It's like, I know the difference. You have no idea how hard it is speaking to a camera. So yeah, but then when you are ready to upgrade camera, what should you actually reach for? Which I think is around the point where you have started to hook into what your niche is, what your possibly even like niche within a niche is. You're starting to work out like what content actually, what formats actually work. You're starting to get some positive feedback. That is the earliest point that I would really consider buying a camera, because before then, it's just like it's not going to help your content get any better. If anything, it's going to put more obstacles in your way, because you could say no longer record straight into the TikTok app and upload. You need to record onto a camera, then bring it into an editing software, which can still be on your phone, but it's still an extra step. And then edit it. You then need to export it with the right settings. And then you need to usually shift that file back onto your phone and then upload it. And you don't have to do that with all your platforms, but most platforms, in fact, I think all of them, they give you far more options when you upload via their mobile app than you do with a desktop app. It's actually one of the really annoying things, especially with YouTube, because YouTube's always kind of been a bit desktop first, that when you upload a short to YouTube, you don't get all of the options. In fact, you can't edit the thumbnail unless you are on mobile, but you don't get all of the options for like disclosing if it's paid content or something like that. Like there's a whole bunch of extra options that you don't get access to if you're on a desktop. So what I have to do a lot of the time on my YouTube shorts is I have to upload them via the desktop to the YouTube, set some of the settings on that page, and then go into the YouTube mobile app, not the YouTube Studio app, which is made for creators. Go into the YouTube normal app, log into my Culinary Garden account there, and then like change the thumbnail and sometimes like add the description there or whatever. And it's so annoying that none of these places just have all their options in like one spot. Same thing with Instagram. Like you can't schedule posts on the Instagram desktop. So even if I edit my shorts and stuff on desktop, I still need to bring them to my phone to then upload via the Instagram app if I want to schedule it, which I don't really need to do too much anymore. Now I'm a lot more fast and loose in my posting times, but I used to try and shoot like a couple shorts at once and then like schedule them out. But anyway, yeah, so when you are ready to upgrade is when you are ready to like take it serious. So I think there are some options. The first thing, which I won't really cover, and that's jumping straight up to a proper mirrorless camera, which is something like the Sony A7 range. And let's be honest, that's what you're going to be moving to. Basically, you can also maybe move to like Panasonic has some good stuff at the moment. Canon has fallen a bit far behind, but they look like they're coming back a little bit. But I mean, generally, you're just going to be buying straight into the Sony ecosystem. Because that price point, you need to have about $5,000 or so to spend, especially if you want to move to full frame straight away, because you need to buy the camera body and lenses. And then possibly you need to buy some really basic stuff like tripod. Make sure that you actually have mic packs that will plug into these cameras. Make sure that you have a PC that can edit them. Yeah, there's just some, and I'm sure I'm forgetting, but there's usually just some additional accessories that you need to buy where it's more expensive than just the camera. So you're looking more at sort of an all-in-one solution. And the two kind of best ones on the market, well, one's a single product, one's a bit more of a category. So the first one, and was the one that I upgraded to first, are like vlogging focused compact cameras. And I started out with the Sony. I'll actually grab it also for the YouTube audience. The Sony ZV-1, which I think is still, this is probably the best bang for buck camera that you can buy right now for content creators. So it's completely all in one. You do still highly recommend buy some sort of external audio for this. So most of the our first probably 4 months or so of Color Garden videos were shot on this, and they still look great. The main reasons that I needed to upgrade is I wanted something that could use a bit of a wider lens, because even though I'm shooting outdoor, my sort of weird U-shaped garden or garden beds, the sort of angles that I wanted to get to shoot from, I usually needed to go a little bit wider than what this allows, which this only goes to a 24 millimeter full frame equivalent, which is a description of how wide the lens goes. 24 millimeters is considered wide angle. It's not really considered ultra wide. But now that I moved to a camera that has interchangeable lenses, I can just buy a wider lens, which now I have one that goes all the way out to 18, which is the Sigma, might even be 16. It is. It's the Sigma 16 to 28 f2.8 C lens. I forget what the C stands for. Creator? It might actually be Creator, but it's the one below the art line. So it's not quite the best lenses that Sigma make, but it's way above their like baselines. It's incredible lens, especially for the money compared to other ultra wides in the market. And like as an example, that lens to buy it secondhand, which if you can buy your camera gear secondhand, and also where possible, try and look at like the model or two before the model that you're looking at and see if it has the same specs or like really similar specs that you can actually live with, because most people, even people who do photos or videos for a living, don't need the most recent gear, especially camera bodies. So like as an example, like the ultra wide lens, that is the lens that I put on this camera that costs like 3 grand or so, that I shoot most of the Color Garden stuff on now. Just that lens is worth about $1,200 if you get it secondhand. Retail, no, I forget what it is. I'll look it up while we go. But compared to the ZV-1, which I bought secondhand for $450, and yeah, that Sigma lens, yeah, retail price is $1,700. Compared to the retail on the ZV-1, this is now like one generation old, but it's still only like, I think like $900 or something was like what JB Hi-Fi sold them for. But you can get them secondhand all day for 600 to 800. If you hunt around for deals, like obviously I did, I paid $450 for it, and there's nothing wrong with my one. The main issues with this is just that it uses some slightly smaller batteries, and my biggest frustration with it is the tripod mount on the bottom is basically in the way of the camera door. So each of the battery door. So each time you change battery, you need to actually pull it off the tripod. But the image quality, absolutely nothing to complain about. Especially if you want to only shoot like TikToks on it. You will look like such a premium creator using it. And then you also need to know that Sony have a whole range of this sort of type of camera. They usually start with Z or ZV. So there's like the ZV-1, the ZV-1 2, which is the new generation of it. There is the ZV-E10, which is a interchangeable lens version of essentially the same camera. There is the ZV-E1, which is another interchangeable lens version of it, but it's a full frame sensor, so a larger sensor, which when you go full frame, you do need to know that the lenses get a bit more expensive because they're more difficult to manufacture a sharp lens that covers more sensor area. And then like there are other companies that make that sort of stuff. Like Canon has their like PowerShot line. I've never really looked into them. Certainly, in my opinion, over the last couple years, over the last we'll call it 7 years, Sony for cameras that like target creators are just so good. They just sit in such a great range of like price and feature set. And that's why I like gravitate towards them. I'm not like sponsored by them or anything. And because they have now been around in this sort of like family of cameras for about 10 years, it's really easy to get a lot of the like the lenses and stuff for fairly cheap. Like the main lens that I actually use on most of my videos is a 24 to 70 f4 and OSS, which is optical stabilization. And that lens, when it came out, was like $1,000 plus lens, and it's manufactured by Zeiss, which is one of the world's leading lens manufacturers, if not the leading world's lens manufacturer, before Sony brought their lens manufacturing in house. And this is like 2 or 3 generations old. There have been essentially versions of the lens come forward that are better, but it's like I paid maybe $500 for that lens compared to the current best generation of the equivalent lens is like nearly 2 grand or so. So yeah, it's like they're pretty great to buy in. But the other lens that is just great to upgrade to is the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. So if you mostly want to make pieces of content where you are doing more like vloggy stuff, where you're out and about, it's fantastic. It is like just a small little lightweight lens. It weighs 180 grams and it has a gimbal on the top. It's got a 1 inch sensor, which is like it's not that big. It's bigger than a smartphone. It's smaller than even like what's in the ZV-1, but it's big enough to get just a subtle depth of field. It actually looks like kind of a decent lens. I mean, it looks like it's shot on a really decent camera. The actual images that you get out of it are incredible. The low light is incredible. Retail, now I would really recommend getting it in the creator bundle. So the one place where you would buy this instead of instead of just shooting on smartphone with upgraded audio, you can jump straight to this if you buy it in the creator bundle, which is about $1,000. The camera on itself is about 700, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. Getting it in the creator bundle, which comes with a battery extension. The main thing is the DJI Mic 2 that it comes with, which all of my TikToks are shot on this thing. I shot on the DJI Osmo with the like mic pack from it. The mic pack is, I don't know, impressive as it gets. And some other little accessories like a little tripod that like goes on the bottom. One of the things that you can get with it that's so handy is it's a little magnetic case where kind of like a phone case, like the camera clings into it, but then the case on the outside has magnets, so you can do things like clip it onto a shopping trolley if you're out doing that sort of vlogging content. Clip it onto shopping shelves or like a light post. Or it also comes with these little like sticky pads where you stick like a little metal sheet onto things for areas where you might commonly use it, say like your car dash, so that you can just jump in the car, chuck it on the dash, it'll stick there and you can just like drive while talking. Really impressive thing if you load it out with a couple of just those extra little cheap accessories. The only downside is that there is no optical like zoom range. You get one focal length, the equivalent of 20 millimeters on full frame, compared to the ZV-1, which goes 24 to 70. So if you need to do any sort of content where you're zooming in more than like 30 to 50% further than that 20 millimeter range, which you can do either in camera or in editing, and the shot will still look fine on like all displays. Like no one will be able to even notice that you've zoomed in. But as long as if you don't need to zoom in like that, it's such an exceptional one piece of kit. It does a great job of shooting both vertically and horizontally in the same orientation. It's got this really weird sensor where it's like when you shoot horizontally, it's almost like it's almost like the sensor is kind of like a square, or and when you're shooting horizontally, you're getting 70% of that sensor, and then when you shoot vertically, you're getting another like extra bit of verticality, but it's chopping off the sides. So it's a little bit. It's not quite the same as just tilting a camera on the side, but it's cool that they've built it so that you don't have to tilt the camera on its side. Um, and plus, having the built-in gimbal means any handheld shots are super, super smooth and steady. You don't get any camera shake, really. Yeah, any application where you just want something like that's all just one package that does it for you and you don't need to zoom in, it's such a spectacular option. I'm so in love with mine. It's such a great camera. The way that I use it so much is it kind of just lives on a monopod that is just super easily adjustable. So I just drag it out into the garden when I'm actually doing gardening stuff so that I can just like hit on and it films me while I'm doing stuff so that I can use that in videos later. Just about the biggest downside to it is the fact that it's got an internal battery. So you can charge it while you're using it, which is if you get the creator combo, you'll get like the battery extension, which will charge it while you're using it. You just can't swap out batteries, but the internal battery will give you about an hour to about 2 hours worth of recording time before you need to charge it. And the battery extension will, I think, a bit over double that. And you could obviously buy additional battery extensions. So if you're filming a full day, it wouldn't be that incredible, but I mean, it does so much in one. And the other cool thing, I mean, a lot of cameras do this, but the DJI app does it so well where you can shoot on the camera and then just pull up the app on your phone and then just download that clip to your phone so that then you can just upload that straight to TikTok or like edit it in the TikTok app or in the DJI app or in CapCut or whatever you want to use on your phone. So that if you don't want to take that additional leap of like getting actual editing software, editing on a PC, that sort of thing, then you don't have to take on that additional learning curve when you get this. But you obviously have like the option and you can get really advanced looking shots out of it by playing around with the color profiles and stuff. You can shoot log on it, which I will not get into, but essentially it's an image that will get you additional dynamic range and additional color space, but you need to actually do some post processing on it. Okay, so that probably went a little bit more in depth than I needed to, but hey, this is the podcast. This is why I'm doing this as a podcast so that I can actually pack in a lot of the extra information that you just never can in video content because attention spans are just too hard to compete for now. All right. At 1 million tree, it might be 1 million tree challenge, us. Thank you for the advice. I'm starting out and thinking about doing vids on the same topic / story and tweaking to learn, as opposed to doing a new topic for each video. Would that be a good idea, or let's stuff up the algorithm? So I think to re-paraphrase the question, I'm pretty sure what you're asking is it a good idea to essentially pick one video idea and make it over again a couple of different ways, like a handful of different ways, so that you can really focus in on like learning what works over what doesn't? Or is that a bad idea? And this is a fantastic question. I love where the thinking is in this because you're thinking in the right mindset of what's the best way to learn the craft of making a good video and seeing that as what's really valuable to start by working on, as opposed to just kind of like trying to make a good video or like just trying to like churn out some content. So there's a little bit to unpack here. It probably won't stuff up the algorithm, although you do need to be careful that YouTube and most platforms will have like a content reuse policy where you can get like warnings and stuff for essentially just posting the same video over and over again. Obviously, if you're changing it up, it wouldn't really come under that because it's kind of just like, I think the AI or whatever just overlays the two videos, and if everything's the same, they will just like sting you with reused content. So it's not going to be like, as long as you're changing it enough, it's not going to be that much of an issue from that perspective. However, if you want to do this kind of with the idea of like part of the feedback that you're going to get through this is like whether it actually works in the algorithm, whether people actually watch it or not. One of the problems that you will encounter with this is that some ideas are just bad. Some ideas just don't work with audiences, even when they are executed exceptionally well. I've definitely found this on my channel that there are some videos where I go like the video craft of this video is as good as I can do. This is like exceptional. But the video idea itself just doesn't really resonate with audiences. Like it's just not that click worthy of a even with rework title and thumbnails. They're just not that interested in that like topic or whatever. And then something that's happened again and again on my channel is I'll sometimes have one video idea, and while I'm researching that, I find another topic that's really interesting to cover, and I go, I can probably nearly write and shoot these in the same day, kind of back to back, because the research is related. I kind of almost accidentally write a whole second video and then do it. And this has happened multiple times where the one that I go, this is a good video idea that I think will perform well, shoot it, edit it, put heaps of effort in, and it does poorly. And then the second video that I do almost as an afterthought just happens to be so much more interesting to an audience and just performs so much better. Still to this day, I mean, I think both of my best two long form videos are both examples of this. Where one of them is, and you can see that like they were both done in pairs, where one was five seeds, five plants I would never start from seed, or five veggies I would never start from seed, and then five veggie seedlings I would never buy, or like five plants like I would never buy from seedling because they're a waste of starting from seed. And the one that I thought was more interesting was like seedlings I would never like waste money on. And as of 5 months later, that video's got 157,000 views, which is like, I mean, that's pretty good. That's like probably a top half of my videos for me. But then the one that was almost the as well video, the five veggies you should never grow from seed. That one's done 517,000 views. And so it's like the one that was the afterthought was actually way more interesting to audiences. And I have another one, which is the five biggest mistakes that you're like making in your garden. Five big gardening mistakes you're making. And I thought this would be like, this is going to be a banger video. This is possibly going to be my best ever performing video. And while I was doing that, one of the things that I wanted to put in there was this topic about allelopathic plants, which are plants that release chemicals that kill other nearby plants. And just going like one of the mistakes you've been making is like planting these around without knowing about it. But it was just a little bit too big of a topic to squeeze into that one video. So I was like, well, I've done the research. I will put in this second video just about make a video about allelopathic plants. And it's quite a niche topic that I thought no one would be interested in. But I go, whatever, I'll make the video. So the one on the five big gardening mistakes was posted 4 months ago. It has 74,000 views. And the one on allelopathic plants, which, by the way, during that whole video, I was pronouncing wrong. Apparently, it's allelopathic, but I was pronouncing it allelopathic, which is apparently different. And oh boy, one of the things that I have realized that I've been getting so wrong is that my whole life, gardening, I have only ever had to like read labels and packets and say things in my head. And now that I have to say those same things to an audience, I have learned that I have been in my head mispronouncing half of the words that I've been using. And again, it's one of those things where it's like one of the reasons that I don't really take criticism from people who aren't other content creators is just like speaking to a camera is so hard. When you have every single word of every single sentence that you say scrutinized, you say so many things so wrong. And especially when I want my videos to all be quite information dense and have really nice coherent sentences. You don't realize until you listen to yourself back how much people convey information just by speaking half sentences. And I know I do it a fair bit in this podcast. I'm definitely nowhere near as not well spoken, but it's just almost appears less well written, even though I don't really write down every word and sentence that I say in my videos, I just kind of think a little bit harder in advance about exactly what's going in this video so that it can be quite information dense without really being waffly. Um, but yeah, that's not actually how people speak in real life. In real life, they don't just nail their own dialogue all the time. They'll half explain something and go, well, actually, but what you also need to know on top of this is, and that just doesn't actually work in a video. But anyway, so this that five big mistakes did 74,000 as of 4 months ago. The one that is you should never grow these plants in your garden, which is about allelopathic plants, has done 330,000 views in the first 3 months. So that's speaking to the point about how some ideas just don't work. And in terms of actually growing your audience and also probably learning the craft of creating good video ideas, which I think is the number one thing that you need to master to hit high view numbers, is just good ideas. So that's like another skill set that you kind of do need to be working on. So I wouldn't recommend trying to just do the same one idea over and over again. In case it doesn't resonate, then you're probably just going to get every video is going to get like 30 views and you don't really have that much to learn from it. Plus, it's also just like you need to just build that knack of going like, I don't think this is the best idea I've ever come up with, but it's the best I've got right now. I better make a video to the point that it's good enough so that I can post it. And you'll find that a random one of those thoughts that you have actually does resonate with an audience. And like you need to know that to be a successful content creator, you need to create so much content. It's actually one of the things that's a little bit annoying. And then you kind of realize once you're a content creator is that probably half the stuff that other like content creators say in their videos, they don't actually care about that much. They're just so incentivized to really pump out that content. On average, it takes the average YouTuber 33 videos, I think, to get monetized. And you need to post an average of like 100 videos to start making like an actual reasonable side income. Like it's a long path. That's a whole lot of ideas. So I can help you though generate some ideas. So here are some here's a cool little exercise that you can do. And this is stolen from Google, specifically Google Venture, which is essentially the investment part of Google that will find cool startups. They will invest millions of dollars into these startups, but then they also have this little team that goes into those startups and teaches them some really cool skills about essentially how to find good business ideas or how to find good ideas to add on to their products and validate if those ideas are good or not while spending basically no money to do so. And this team that does this have written a book that tells you their exact like methodologies to doing this. It's called Sprint is the book. If you're thinking about taking content creation as a like business and treating it as a business, I would probably put that on the recommended list of books to read because it's quite short. If you get it as an audiobook, it's like 6 hours. So by the time you put it on 1.25% or 1.5 times speed, 1.25 speed or 1.5 times speed, it's like a week's worth of commutes. You will be able to read this book. But one of the exercises in there is here's how to create your video ideas. So I hope you know like your niche or like your topic that you want your channel to be centered around, and having it be around one topic, your channel be around one subject or topic or niche or hobby is really important because audience members who are going to follow you essentially need an indication that if they hit subscribe when they have your videos come back again, that they know in advance what those videos are about. Users want to curate their own library of content that gets recommended to them. And you need to be a really definitive, almost brand or like brand of content or subject. They can go, yeah, that is something that I will want to know more about as like your videos come out. And that's why it's important to focus on one thing. So like pick your subject or whatever that you're making it about. Maybe cut flower gardens is what you want to make your channel about. And set a timer for 15 minutes and turn off like all devices. And then just sit with a notepad in front of you. Hit start on the timer with a like alarm clock and just put it to the side. And then just write down as many possible video ideas that you can come up with um, in that time. Just all of the different like little subjects that you can make, like write about cut flower gardens. You could start by just you're going to start by listing out all the different flowers that you can think of, like zinnias, marigolds, dahlias, and you just like write down as many as you think, and then you will probably get to the end of that and go, now what? Pruning techniques, soil preparation, and you'll just keep thinking of as many video ideas as you can. By the end of that 15 minutes, you'll probably have a good like 50 or so ideas written down. Then once you've done that, go just like read back through them, spend a couple minutes, and just maybe put like a star or an asterisk next to your 8 best ideas. No, actually, sorry, pick your one best idea, maybe one or two best ideas out of there that you're the most excited about, that you just, lights up those neurons in your brain and gets you excited about it. Then once you have that, what you're going to do is take an A4 piece of paper, fold it in half, like flatwise, so that it keeps the same ratio. I don't know how to describe that. Fold it in half so that it's not lengthwise. And then fold that in half again and again, and just like crease the paper so that when you open it up, you have 8 distinct sections. Now, what you're going to do is set a timer for 8 minutes, and you're going to do what's called crazy eights. And you will, on your one video subject, write down, you get to spend 1 minute on each, or 8 minutes total. And you get to just, on your one video subject, come up with 8 different ways with some like dot points. You can maybe even sketch out a thumbnail of 8 different ways to handle that same video idea or that same subject matter. And you'll be blown away by the quality of ideas and depth of complexity and different angles of covering the same topic that your brain can come out with when you actually give it the space to ideate really well. And then once that 8 minutes is up, you get to look over them and then just like pick the one that pick the idea or the execution of that you think is the most exciting, also probably one that you see as being the most achievable, because that's a really big thing with early content creators is you have more taste than skill. And you probably might want to do, like I really want to do, some really bigger projects, doing like stuff outside of just my garden, really do like, full garden renovations in a single video and that sort of thing. But that costs so much time and money to do and so much organization. I will need other people helping me out with that. It's just not something that I can do at this stage in my career, in my content creator journey. So I create video ideas and like video formats that actually work within the resources that I have available to me. And then so you can pick the one that you're going to do and then just do it. Just try and have a go, film it, get through the learning curve of actually just editing a video, actually upload it, which is a scary thing onto itself, of actually learning how to create a thumbnail, write a description, learn how the upload button works. There's a couple extra things in that screen that might freak you out, where you have to declare like that you haven't stolen the content. You will learn, say on YouTube, that once you have uploaded it, you will want to leave that video as unlisted for like a couple hours, because YouTube will process through the information to check that there's no like copyright issues. And if it catches that before you publish the video, you don't get in trouble. They just tell you like there's an issue with this. Whereas if you find that after you publish the video, then you might actually get a copyright strike against your account, and you only get 3 before your account gets deleted. So there's just this whole learning curve. So you're so much better off like trying to do like just do an idea till it's executed. And I highly, highly recommend giving yourself a deadline to do it, so that it's like once you are done with it, just like once that deadline is ticking, you have until Sunday evening to upload it, and you just like get it uploaded. You will not be happy with it. You'll see all the issues in it. That's fine. That's expected. One of my things that I've been talking about with my partner lately is how some like artists and say musicians have taken this, they've magically achieved this awesome rebranding of failure and doing something poorly, and they have managed to rebrand it into practice. And you need to think of all other skills that you learn and like the creative pursuit of trying to become a creator as the same thing. Like you wouldn't be able to sit down at a piano and first go try and start playing some like Chopin's Eighth or whatever, some super difficult thing. You need to practice a lot to get to that point. You are not going to be able to, on your first go, actually make an awesome YouTube video. You're going to make something that is like okay, hopefully, that you can then upload. And you need to get through that full cycle of hitting upload. And that is going to be much more valuable than making something and not uploading it. Because it'll also just help you, well, you start building your audience as you go. And there are still some really valuable members of the culinary garden community that I still recognize their names from being in my first like 100 subscribers, and they still regularly comment on videos. The people that you will find that are willing to put up with your early stage content. And make no mistake, people are willing to be early adopters of creators and new ideas, especially if you bring something different to the table. Even if your videos are so unpolished and so rough, if there is something different about your content that other people might not be getting from other creators, even if it's something as simple as just like you are in the same country or they're a local to you, they will probably be quite receptive to supporting you through your journey. And then what you need to do is once that's uploaded, set yourself your next deadline. I really recommend just doing one a week, or again, do a TikTok a day for 30 days. And then with long form, do like one a week. And then just having that deadline that you absolutely commit yourself to. And for Culinary Garden, I committed to, I am willing to upload one video a week for 2 years, and I am committing to doing that before I'm willing to deem whether this channel is a success or a failure. I was prepared to upload for 2 years to no audience, hoping that I would, by the end of that, have like 1,000 subscribers. And I had kind of started to work out what I need to do to like gain traction. Being committed to doing that, and then within the first like couple months, seeing like the success that I expected to see after that period, because I went into that with that mindset of this is such a long-term game and I'm willing to really exercise real discipline in making this happen. That's one of the reasons that I found so much success so early. So yeah, is it a good idea to do the same topic over and over again? Okay, the one idea that I've had, and I originally thought about doing this when I started my channel, I just couldn't be bothered. But if you can be bothered, something very similar to this that you could probably do, because a lot of businesses actually do this. A lot of startups do it. Some big businesses do this. When they want to launch a new product or idea, they will, under the guise of like 4 or 8 different brands, launch variations of the product to then see what actually gains the most like attention from potential customers, where they will then have some sort of quantifiable metric about like they will have pre-order now or like find out on the wait list or whatever, because they might be launching a new bag and they'll put out 8, say 4 different variations of the bag that has zippers in different spots and like color designs in different places. And then they might even do a secondary round of this where they will then launch that bag under 4 or 8 different brand names to work out what brand actually works better. Is it better just called like Thompson Bags, where it has bags in the name, or is it something completely different like Radical Designs, and that's like a different brand name? They will do these really quantifiable tests. So what you could do is, if you had different ideas or different executions of a video that you wanted to do, or different tweaks, you could create the same video, say 4 times, make 4 separate YouTube accounts, upload each of them to those 4 separate accounts, and then just see like which one actually takes off. The most valuable way to do this is you do need to understand the difference between a qualified learning and like an observational learning. A qualified learning is essentially you need to say or like write down what I think will happen when I make this change to the video is this. I think that when I change the introduction in this way, I will see less of a drop off in the 30 seconds. And then, if that less of a drop off happens, you basically have a quantifiable learning that you can apply. Whereas if you just like, you have changed something in the video and you go like, well, yeah, this video, there's just like, there's more music in the background. Towards the end, I've added in more shots of my cats because people like cats, and I haven't added an end screen. I just like end the video like as it ends. And then you see less of a drop off in the intro. You then, out of those like three different things, you don't know what's caused that different drop off or even if there is a correlation. And again, this is stolen from the world of business because like there's this whole thing where like if your business gets an extra 20% of sales in the month, you will have every department, like marketing will go, see, like our marketing campaign, this thing has worked. We got an extra 20% of sales. And product will go, see, we rolled out these extra features. There's an extra 20% of sales. That's because of us. And you'll get customer service go, see, we've done such a better job onboarding our customers. Those extra 20% of sales, that's because of word of mouth, because of us. And you'll see the sales department and they'll go, see, we've been so much better at converting customers who have called in. Those extra sales are because of us. And because no one has like made this hypothesis at the start of this is the change that I'm making and the impact that I think will happen, everyone just like, no one actually knows how to replicate that same success again. And everyone just claims the victory is their own. Whereas then if sales drop by 20%, none of those same voices are going, oh yeah, it's because we didn't convert as well. It's because we rolled back this feature. No one's willing to make that claim when things are bad. So it's really important if you want to learn how to essentially tune the engine of your channel is you need to make those quantifiable hypotheses before you make the change and then go, I'm going to make this change because I think this happens. And then it goes, and it did happen. Now I know, or it didn't happen. And then you can kind of also do the inverse where it's like, oh, saying this sentence differently in the intro doesn't actually impact the way the intros work. And so, like, one thing you would like an example of when I have done this on my channel is when you might have noticed in my recent videos, I have been doing a lot more harking on to later on in the video, I'll show you this next thing and kind of reminding the audience a couple times because I had the hypothesis that if I do that, I will be able to decrease the amount of drop off that's happening through that middle and late parts of the video, especially as some of the information through the video like really gets revealed. If someone's come for only like that first part, they then just like click off and it kind of starts to kill the average watch time of the video. But by introducing these additional like, oh, and later in the video, I'll also show you this extra thing that you will definitely want to know how to do. Then so many fewer people are like dropping off through that part and just making the videos perform exceptionally better. And I really need to work out a less on the nose way of doing it, which I started to work out how to do a bit. But it's still just a work in progress. I think ultimately it's better off to start with a really overt thing that you are trying to do. Like, I will like wait to the end of the video and I'll show you this is really overt and kind of on the nose, and audiences don't love it that much. But you've got to start somewhere, and starting with that and then working out how to organically introduce those sort of concepts into your video almost as part of the story where you go like, let's see if the end, like implicitly in the story, you will see if this actually works out. Like in my Temu video, when instead of going like, and at the end, I'll show you this thing, I start by going like, I'm going to build this fish tank, like this fish tank garden thing. And you will go, and yeah, I get 20% of the way through the build, and then I go, but now I need to leave this for a week, and we will come back to it later. And that's a really organic reason to leave someone wondering, oh yeah, I do want to see that thing later in the video. And then halfway through the video, we get to the next point where I do that and go, here's the next like part of the fish tank thing. We install all the plants, but before we put fish in, we do need to wait for an extra couple days for the water to settle back down. So we'll check back in with it later. And then it's later on in the video, it's essentially the last thing that we get to. And that's so much more organic than what I has previously been doing with like, say, my seed starting video, where I, a couple times in the video go like, and at the end, I'll show you like the secret method to getting seeds started like nearly guaranteed every time, so much faster in like 3 days instead of 2 weeks, which I do show. So it's not like clickbait, but it's just that that's so much more almost against the grain than just like smooth storytelling. All right, so that is the episode. It's been a little bit longer than normal. If you are on any platform, please make sure to rate it 5 stars. If you watch this on YouTube, consider checking it out on any of the other platforms. Maybe if you only watch one episode on YouTube, listen to it on Spotify maybe, because I need to roughly double my listens per episode, and then I will get access to the full feature set that actual podcast creators get access to, which is annoying, but I mean, completely acceptable. There's a lot of like AI generated podcasts and stuff. So I think they just don't want to give it to those sort of people and want to give it to actual creators that are actually trying to make some genuinely like good pieces of content, which I hope this will go with. Remember to leave your questions. If you want to hear more tech stuff, let me know. Or if you want it dropped completely, let me know. Thank you very much. And I will see you next time.